Am I the asshole for not throwing away my partner's trash after she told me not to touch her stuff? My partner and I, both 31 female, have been living with each other for about 4 months after 3 years of dating. We use one of the rooms in the house as our office space, chill zone. She has one far side of the room as her space, and the other side is my space. To set a bit of background, I am a PC player, so I have a double monitor setup on my desk. She is a console player, so we mounted her 42 TV on the wall right above her desk. When I lived on my own, I loved curling up in bed with my pups and watching TV to decompress. When we moved in, I compromised with not having my dogs in the bed anymore because that's just something she didn't like. Well, fine, since we don't have a TV in the bedroom anyways. We hadn't bought a TV for the living room because her mom said she would get us one for Christmas. 4 months later, we still haven't gotten the TV. Luckily, our friend who rents the basement had an extra 32 inches that she let me borrow. Now, I'm watching TV on this small screen just so I can curl up on the couch with my pups, but because the TV is so old, so small, and so far away from the couch, it just isn't the best experience. Now, where the story really begins. When we eat dinner, I roll over my chair to her desk, and we will watch an episode of a show while we eat. My partner had to be up early for work, so she got up to go to bed. Since I worked remotely the following day, I asked if I could just keep watching TV. That's when things got weird. She got very upset and told me that she didn't want me sitting in her space. She doesn't like when people mess with her desk. I sat there, completely flabbergasted. I just wanted to watch a little bit more TV before I head to bed, I said, confused at her reaction. She continued saying that I should just go sit at my desk and watch TV or go to the couch. But all I wanted to do was get to watch TV on something bigger than a 32 inches screen that was 10 feet away. She kept going on about how her desk was the only space in the house that was hers and that it was a hard no. After we closed on the house, she lost her job, and I was the sole provider for 3 months. I tried very hard not to complain to make sure she didn't feel worse about the situation. I can give so many examples of everything, mine, that is now, ours, but I'm pushing the character limit, lol. None of that has ever really mattered to me because I'm grateful that I can give her things she's never had before. We cohabitate really well. I absolutely love living with her. But I was just so upset that this was where she drew the line. Her desk. When I have never thrown in her face everything of mine that she takes and sometimes ruins. After she went to bed, I threw away my trash and left hers there. She called me out the next day for it, but I just said that I didn't want to touch anything in her space. She was upset and called me petty. So, am I the asshole for not throwing away her trash? Commenter asked me to include this edit. I believe the resentment, on my part, comes in because it wasn't just for 3 months. Prior to her losing her job, she was only there for less than 6 months, and before that, I paid her rent and bills. Prior to that, she lost her job during the pandemic and I helped her buy a car as well as paying all of her bills and rent. So this isn't just a one-time thing where I have been the sole provider. It has been going on the entirety of our relationship. I had always seen it as helping her out when life has shat on her. So I am extremely hurt that the one time I ask to use the one thing that I don't have, she tells me that I'm not allowed to. Not the asshole, is it petty? Yeah, since you know what she meant, but it proves a point to her. She's stopping you from watching your TV that was moved there so that she could have a larger screen. Pretty ballsy of her to stop you from watching a show on it, especially since other things in the house are shared. After we closed on the house, she lost her job, and I was the sole provider for 3 months. I tried very hard not to complain to make sure she didn't feel worse about the situation. I was with you, at least partially, until this part. Paying the bills for 3 months doesn't mean that your partner never gets to have boundaries or privacy ever again. I live in a very small 2-bedroom home with my husband and 2 elementary-age daughters. We've gotten very good at sharing obviously, but the thing we're best at because we have to be, is respecting boundaries. There's no other way to survive without breeding resentment, as you're seeing now. I don't know why she didn't want you to stay at her desk, but I also don't know why you couldn't just go to your own desk or the living room. You are the asshole. Not the asshole she made a big deal of you watching TV in her space and that she didn't want her stuff in her space touched. You abided by her wishes. And now she's upset that you didn't throw away the trash in her space. She can't have it both ways. You are the asshole, and also you being the provider doesn't mean anything for this specific scenario. It just means that you need to communicate how you've been feeling more directly. Info. Was the trash on her desk or in her space? You left out that pretty crucial piece of information. And obviously, her mom is not gonna buy you a TV. So why don't you just buy your own? Am I the asshole for leaving when my brother-in-law wouldn't let me in the hot tub? My brother-in-law just bought a new house. He lives about 4 hours from us. Last weekend my husband and I went to visit him for a few days and see the house for the first time. Long story short, I got my period while I was sleeping and the guest room sheets had a small bloodstain, about the size of a quarter. My husband helped me strip the bed and I went down to the laundry room to pre-treat and then wash the sheets. When they were done, the bloodstain was 100% gone, but when we told brother-in-law he looked completely disgusted. He inspected the sheets super closely for a very long time and finally I was like, Jesus, Bill, if you're looking that closely and can't find a stain, can't you trust me that I got it out? He seemed really put out by the whole thing. That night, we had plans to hang out in Bill's hot tub in the backyard, but after dinner, he told me that I wasn't allowed in the hot tub because of my period. I was shocked and explained that the nighttime leak was because I hadn't been expecting my period and had been fast asleep all night, but that it was perfectly safe and sanitary for me to put in a tampon and sit in the hot tub for an hour. But he wouldn't budge. My husband had my back and told him that he was being ridiculous, and it ended up turning into a big argument. Eventually my husband and I decided to pack our stuff and stay at a nearby hotel, and then we drove home the next morning. Now brother-in-law is pissed at us for leaving and for not respecting his home. He also Venmo requested my husband $100 for new sheets, which he is refusing to pay, but trust that if the stain hadn't come out, we would have been happy to replace them. He told his whole side of the family, who've decided to fully stay out of it, I wish they had our backs more, but at least they're not piling onto us. So are husband and I asshole for leaving and not paying for the sheets? Edit. I swore I'd never be one of those people who did this, but to all the people who say everyone sucks here or you are the asshole because of a certain risk, that I won't mention here because this isn't a medical sub. I'll just say that IF brother-in-law was worried about that risk for me, it would be a different story. He didn't want me in the hot tub because, period blood is gross. Edit number 2. For everyone asking why I even told him, it's because my period isn't a dirty little secret, it's a natural thing that happens to half of the adult population. And because I'm not going to sneak around like a cat burglar to do laundry. He heard the dryer buzz and asked about it and I told him. Edit number 3. Some more FAQs. Bill has a girlfriend who doesn't live with him. She hung out with us the first night, that was the first time I'd met her, but had to work the night of the argument so she wasn't around. IDK what she thinks of the whole situation and I'm not going to reach out about it. And brother-in-law isn't on the spectrum, he doesn't have OCD, and he's not a germaphobe. He just thinks it's gross. Edit number 4. Wow, this really blew up. Anyway, please trust that I know my body and my flow and that on the first full day of my period I know that I can wear a tampon for a while without leaking. For what it's worth, we did go to the hotel hot tub after we checked on and I stayed in for 90 minutes and when I got out there was nary a speck of evil dirty vagina blood on my bathing suit. Not the asshole. Your brother-in-law sounds like one of the worst types of humans ever. The types I avoid fiercely. Also $100 for sheets hahaha. Not the asshole. The brother-in-law is such a horrific misogynist. I'm only a trans woman so I can't claim to understand fully what it's like to be on your period, but what I do know is that it is out of your control. And the stuff that was in your control like cleaning up was done correctly. If you left it stained I can understand him getting angry, but you cleaned up and honestly I think if you had it in the hot tub, it would have been much easier to clean. When will people learn that periods are a natural occurrence and stop demonizing people for having them? FYI, kudos to your husband for sticking up for you. Usually the complaints come from the husband, so it's a nice change of pace. Edit. Loving all the gender affirmation in the replies. That's very sweet of you all. Smiling face with hearts. Should I be in shock at the number of people on this thread who are woefully misinformed on how periods and tampons work? Not the asshole, your brother-in-law is acting like a child. Not the asshole. I suppose there's arguments to be made about the sheets if the strain hadn't come out. But this definitely feels more like an "ew, women are gross. Stop being gross" sort of tantrum. Info. Brother-in-law is single, yes? Am I the asshole for yelling at my roommate for refusing to leave the room? I, 19 male, and my roommate, 18 male, are both freshmen in college and we share an almost impressively small one-room double. He and I were placed together after taking a roommate survey, so we were both new to each other at the start of the year. Things went pretty well the first couple of weeks. He was introverted but nice enough, and we both got along fairly well. We weren't friends or anything, but I don't think either of us had a problem with that. The real issue started a few weeks into the first semester. My roommate's kind of a loner, and he rarely leaves the room. I don't really think he has friends, to be honest, and it seems like he more or less just lies in bed all day and plays Genshin Impact. I didn't think much of it at first. Not my choice of lifestyle, but it didn't bother me. So, at one of the first couple parties of the year I met a girl, and I took her back to our dorm. I knew my roommate would be there but figured he could leave the room for a little bit if I asked. Sure enough, he was curled up in bed staring at his phone. When I asked if he wouldn't mind leaving for a little while, he responded that he had a headache and didn't feel up to it. I felt that was fair enough, and I ended up going back to the girls' dorm instead, so no harm done. The next day, however, I asked him how his headache was and he gave me a puzzled look for a few seconds before he seemed to realize what I was talking about. This made me think he had made up the headache as an excuse not to leave the room, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt. From there on out, anytime I would meet a girl at a party, I made a point to make sure we went to her dorm instead of mine. This past week, however, I met a girl at a party and she said she didn't feel comfortable going to her place, because her roommate's younger brother was visiting and staying in their room. As a result, we went back to my room. I walked into the room and he was laying on the floor in his underwear chuckling at TikTok. The girl was waiting just outside in the hallway and I asked if he wouldn't mind giving us the room. When I asked this, he sat up, crossed his arms, stuck his bottom lip out and started shaking his head no like a child. When I asked him why, he just stuck his tongue out at me. I kind of flipped out, to be honest. I yelled at him, and told him it wasn't just his room. I had also been fairly annoyed recently about how he never leaves the room, and I may have gotten a little too personal as a result. I think what really set me off is that he, not infrequently, will start jerking off while I'm in the room forcing me to leave. So I felt like he had no problem rudely kicking me out, but wouldn't let me do the same, despite being much more cordial. As a result, I called him a loser with no life whatsoever and stormed out of the room. Since then he won't talk with me at all, even though I tried to apologize. Instead, he literally hides under the covers every time he hears me enter. Everyone sucks here, it's his room. If he doesn't want to leave, he doesn't have to. The nice thing to do would be to give you some time, but it doesn't make him an asshole for not doing it. However, he's a huge asshole for doing that whilst you're in the room. I feel you did yourself a disservice by having that so far down in your post and people will miss it. You threw a curveball in your post with your roommate randomly jacking off. Does he have any mental issues? This sounds like odd behavior, even for an introverted loner. Also, it sounds like neither of you established any rules for the dorm you share. As you stated earlier, it is his room as much as it is yours and has a right to be there. I think you're both the asshole and neither of you are considerate of each other as roommates. Everyone sucks here. But I'd honestly be so disgusted by him putting his bottom lip out and acting like a baby I might have kicked him in the head right then and there. Yes, I know, violence is not the answer. There is something so irritating about that visual though. Good luck. Get a new roomie. Or start a jerking off contest. So, describing your roommate, it sounds like he might have a mental health problem and you look for a place to get laid. Yeah. Two very different problems. You are not going to solve this. Try to get a new room somewhere else. Include in your ad that you need privacy to entertain lady friends. Ps. Jerking off with you in the room. Gross. No one should be told they have to leave their only residence. Sharing the room means you both have the right to be there anytime you choose to be. One of you can't kick the other out. That being said, it's pretty over the line for him to jerk off with you in the room. Not okay. Sharing dorms with random people sucks. Try to arrange a different living situation for yourself with friends. Start asking around at parties or in your classes. I only did student housing for like 6 months and then got an apartment with 2 friends. I know it might be different in your school, but I don't know that's my best advice. Am I the asshole for turning on the child lock feature on my car windows? My 30M brother, Alex 25M, has been dating Rose 24F for nearly a year now. I like her a lot for the most part, but this instance has caused issues. Rose gets hot easily and prefers to have the windows down. It doesn't matter what vehicle, what kind of weather temperature-wise she needs them down. In her own, I don't think it's that big of a deal because she's driving. I don't mind the windows being down if we're driving through town. However, I cannot drive with windows down on the highway. I have ADHD and so driving in itself is a bit of a challenge. I've learned how to deal with minor distractions, but one I cannot get over is the sound of the windows down on the highway. I've explained this to Rose and offered to even turn on the AC if she's truly that hot. She says she needs the windows down or else she's going to overheat. I've told her to either wear layers in the car or again, I'll put on the AC. She's continued to do so, even after several talks with both her and Alex. My brother just kind of shrugs and says, "What can you do?" Both have said there is no condition behind this preference. As I said, Rose is a fun person, so the three of us and my girlfriend, Paige, 30F, will go out often. At first, we took turns driving if we weren't Ubering somewhere, but given this whole window debacle, I had stopped offering. Then Murphy's Law went into place. The only available car was mine last night. We picked up Alex and Rose, who sat in the backseat. As usual, Rose turned down the window. I told her I would be rolling it up when we got on the highway and she said that was fine and even did it herself when we pulled on. 2 minutes later, I hear the window coming down and that awful whooshing sound. I told her to put it back up and she started whining, "But I'm hot." I pointed out that the AC was on and that wasn't enough for her. She still refused. We came on a bit of traffic. I don't know if all cars have this, but mine has one where you can prevent the backseat from opening and closing the window. I assume it's a feature mostly for people with kids. I rolled up the window and used the feature. I don't think Rose realized I had done it, as it's a silent maneuver, she just knew I rolled up the window. A little later, she tries to put it down again and it obviously doesn't work. She's getting frustrated. I tell her that it's not going to roll down and I won't unlock it until we get off the highway. She starts freaking out, telling me she's so hot and I need to open the window now. I tell her no and crank up the AC some more if she's that hot. Alex kept telling her to calm down, she's fine, etc. Rose whined the entire way, even when we got off the highway and I unlocked the windows. She didn't even touch them. When we got to our destination, Rose took an Uber home in a huff. She texted me later saying I'm an asshole and if I expect her to get over being hot in the car, why can't I get over the distraction of the highway? Am I the asshole? Not the asshole. I would tell them you are never driving with her as a passenger again. Your safety supersedes her comfort. Your medical issues supersede her preferences. Not the asshole at all, she sounds like a lot to deal with. You offered perfectly good compromises and as the driver, what you say goes. Period. If she wants the windows down on the highway, she can drive. Plus AC is way better at cooling a person than a rolled down window. Not the asshole. It's your car. That's really it. Rose, at 24, should have already learned that the world will not always bend to her whim. If she knows she gets hot in cars, she should get herself a couple of pretty fans or even one of those rechargeable cooling gizmos. Not the asshole. If Rose needs that much cooling, she should be seeing a doctor. If you genuinely need to cut out distractions while driving, then that takes priority and Rose needs to grow up. Not the asshole. I personally have really bad ears and I can't drive at all with the windows down unless I'm going 10 miles or less. You're maneuvering a multi-ton metal death machine, so your concentration takes precedence over her being hot. Also, the AC should be enough.